Hey, what's going on, y'all? Happy Tuesday, or whatever day of the week you are viewing this. It is, for me, Tuesday, August 5th. So I wanted to come on here and talk about something that is trending right now. And I have a mixture of feelings because of my background and the way I see things. But before we get into this, please like, comment, subscribe, and share, okay? I know it's been a while. First pop culture rant in like 4 months. So I'm sorry, guys. It's been a busy summer. But anywho, what we're here to talk about is the Jackie, Christie, and Chantel Christie saga and the Carlos King interview. And there were some things that Chantel said in the interview that I kind of understand her on. I too was in a situation like Chantel before where my mother was extremely toxic and I had to set boundaries, and those boundaries didn't really look like what people think they should look like based on how our community raises our children. And this is why I said I had mixed feelings, because before the interview, and I'm glad she did the interview, before the interview, and I don't watch the show because I just, Basketball Wives is not my zhuzh anymore. But this situation has been very popularized, and even if you don't watch the show, you can't help but hear about it. So I heard about it, saw the clips, and before I watched the interview, I had one thought process. I was like, because I'm a mother, I said, oh, if my daughter ever did that, get her, Jackie, hit her again, hit her again. You know, that was my thought process, right? Because I was like everyone else, you know, this is Jackie's platform. You're her daughter. You guys are on a national platform, united front. You do not break down the union, okay? You support your mom, you back your mom, and vice versa. You guys back each other. You could be a team. You didn't do that. So you, my friend, are in the wrong. You're in the wrong. However, and this is why I said it's different for me. I saw that interview, and while I don't justify what she did, you know, as a mother, her getting like that with her mother, I understand when you have a toxic parent and a narcissistic parent, a dismissive avoidant parent, and you are constantly chasing after like a normal, because in families like that, there is no true normalcy. The dysfunction is the normalcy. But you don't realize that until you become self-actualized as a person. You grow up, you start to see things, and then you compare and you're like, is this normal? And then you realize it's not normal. So then not only have you been subjected to whatever abuse and misunderstanding and misfortunes that have occurred while you have been existing in that dynamic, the ruse has been lifted, and now you have this new enlightenment, and you feel like years have been robbed of you. It's a twisted mental, like, mind cluck. I will tell you that, because like I said, I come from a situation similar to Chantel's. Give you a little backstory with my mom. My mom was a foster child, right? And my mother's mother abandoned her. So my mother had a strong sense of abandonment. She was a rebel, and she took us through a lot of her, you know, dysfunction because she had never healed. And that was a phrase that was mentioned in this interview too that made me say, oh, okay, I get it. My mother was unhealed throughout her whole adult life from things that had occurred in her childhood. So by the time she had children, she's not healed. She put a lot of stuff on us, and she was very abusive, verbally, emotionally, physically, you name it. She, you know, that was my mom. And I struggle even to this day with my mother, because while she does not repeat, you know, the things of the past because I'm an adult, there are behaviors within her that mirror some of the actions that she did do back in the day. And I get triggered even as a 41-year-old woman, because she has not healed and she has not confronted her demons. And I've even told my mom this: Mom, you get in your own way. You know, you can be, and I said, you need to pray whatever spirit that is that has you, like, that's got a weight on you, because this is why you can't thrive as a person. That's how deep it gets. So when Chantel was talking to Carlos about you know, all the stuff that she's gone through with Jackie, and, you know, the conversation about how they were going to handle each other on the show, and then Jackie switching it up on camera, not warning Chantel being thrown off. That's manipulation. And again, this is a daughter. Yeah, you talk about Jackie saying, or whoever saying in defense of Jackie, Chantel, you're on my platform, yada yada yada, you shouldn't be disrespecting me. Well, Jackie, you are the parent, and you are supposed to be protecting your child, because again, I'm a mom too. If it was my daughter and she came on the show and she had, you know, something going on, an unfortunate situation like a custody battle, I am not going to bring that topic up, and I'm not going to like provoke her and be sneaky, because Jackie has that advantage over Chantel. She does have that reality TV star, you know, experience. So she can manipulate, you know, the storyline as best as she can and gaslight Chantel. We're not the wiser because Jackie is in her producer bag. We're not seeing this. So when Chantel was laying out all of the stuff that she was saying, I said, oh, shoot, okay, I get it. I get it. And you know what else she said in this interview? Because this is something I'm very passionate about. She said in the interview that Black families, we raise our children with this, you know, children are to be seen and not heard, do as I say, not as I do mentality. And she said, you know, there's a new generation of parents within the community that we're getting rid of that. And I'm a part of that community myself. I always joke about being a millennial mom or whatever and the soft parenting, but that is very true. Very true. I also subscribe to that soft parenting, looking at my child as the whole person. And I try not to push a lot of that old Negro style of parenting, I like to call it, where I feel the parents they knew what they knew, right? But a lot of how we were raised was raised out of fear. And it wasn't out of like, you know, self-identity, pride, you know, perseverance. We were in a society where we had to take what we can get. So we wanted to make sure our kids played it safe, right? So whatever we had to do to scare them into playing it safe, that's what we did. That is my belief, and that is my experience. You know, ignorance is ignorance, and you only do know what you know, right? So now you've got parents like Chantel spoke about, and like I said, I try to operate as in the Black community, that we do allow for our kids to be seen. We allow for them to speak up. We allow for them to tell us when we're wrong. We allow for them to challenge us. We allow for them to have a voice early. And that's all that is. And I feel like that is a more effective way of parenting, because you allow for your child to develop critical thinking skills early and conflict resolution skills early. I feel like a lot of our dysfunction that still exists within our community is a result of that type of parenting. The parenting where you suppress the child's voice. And that is something I do not ride with. That's why Chantel was able to shift my mindset a little bit, because when she said that, I said, oh, okay, I think I got a better idea of what was going on. I don't agree with them being on a platform together if they weren't both healed, but I see what it is. And Chantel is still healing from her childhood, her traumatic childhood. Jackie has no accountability, unfortunately. I look at this and I do see Jackie as the adult. Chantel is an adult now, but in this, you know, mother-child dynamic, Jackie is the adult. However, Chantel mentioned something in the interview that I agree with this too. Okay, as the newer generation, we know this, right? Unfortunately, we bear the burden to do better. So sometimes we have to sacrifice those expectations that we have on our parents, because again, they don't know. They only know what they know. They only operated the way they knew how to operate, right? So, Chantel. If I had to give her advice, I would just say walk away from Basketball Wives and just live your life in peace. You really don't need the money. You seem like you got a level head. You done found a good husband. You guys got a good operation over there with your family. Everything is peaceful. All money ain't good money. Leave Jackie where she is, because I saw right through everything she was saying, and I get it. That's the problem. And I say this a lot, is in our community, again, because there is still so much dysfunction due to like just things that have happened to us. Well, the systems of oppression can no longer be an excuse as to why we don't try to do better. Okay? We oppress each other. We oppress each other. And then we sit here and we expect people to give us respect as a collective, but we don't even respect each other within the collective. Okay, you've got men that openly disrespect their women. Okay, I don't rarely hear, you can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I rarely hear other races disrespect their women like the black men do. And I've actually been in conversations with other than brothers, I call them, men who are not black. I've married 2 white men. I've heard these men say this. The reason why they look at black men the way that they do is because black men do not take care of their families. It has been said, okay? 2, then you've got, you know, the elders who are manipulating their position in life. They have a toxic rhetoric. They have a sense of, like, you know, not striving for more, but they have a stronghold on the generation below them because that generation is subscribing to that. I have to respect you because you're an elder. And Chantel says something that I'm sorry, I've always been like that because I had to adopt this early because the adults that are around me did not deserve this respect. Chantel said, no, just because you're an adult, I don't have to respect you. You have to give me something to respect. And I agree with that. I agree with that. That goes into that whole raising the child to be a whole person. I don't feel like you should suppress the child's voice. In fact, you should actually be encouraging a child to build their voice while they're a child because they're only a child for 17 years out of their life. So if you're constantly robbing them of the ability to, you know, challenge authority, work out conflict, you know, they're going to have conflict with their parents. And if you're robbing them of their voice in that conflict, they're not learning how to resolve conflict. Some things are not all solved with their friend groups. Some things have to be solved with the adults in their life, and adults set too many hard boundaries. And then this is why you grow up with the issues that you do, the setbacks that you have within our community. Because it's a vicious, toxic cycle of oppression. We were oppressed, now we oppress each other. And that ain't cool. That ain't cool. So, while I do not agree with Chantel entirely, I totally understand her a lot more after that Carlos King interview. Because I would be lying. I would be totally lying if I did not admit or cop to some of the shit that she mentioned in the interview that is dysfunctional within our community. And that's exactly what we saw, y'all. Only they're on a larger scale and they got money. But that's what you saw. You saw a toxic parent who is unapologetic and has no accountability, passing down intergenerational trauma to her daughter, and then her daughter is not standing for it. Like, even the relationship with the other daughter, Takari, there were red flags then we were hearing about Jackie. You know, the whole colorism treatment. Treating Takari one way because she's dark and Chantel one way because she's light. Let's not act like that doesn't exist. It existed in my house. My little sister's light skinned, I'm dark, but my mom always was pouring into my little sister the extracurricular activities. I don't know if she thought this, if she knew she was intentional. Like, I don't know if my mother was intentionally doing it unknowing, like maybe she just didn't realize that's what was going on, but that's how I saw it. All my activities that I had to do for myself, I did for myself. That's why I got a job when I was 16 so that I could pay for my own activities. So yeah, that's why I'm like, I get it. I think y'all get the point, y'all. What y'all think? Please, I really want to engage on this topic, y'all, because this goes deeper than just what we saw in Basketball Wives. This is a conversation as a whole that we have to do better each generation. And then as we progress, I feel like the generations have to respectively pass the torch. Give the generation below them the respect that they deserve. Right? Because they are the next generation. This is why you see the decline in family reunions. My cousin was even telling me, he said, I think the family started losing contact with your generation. Well, you want to know why? Because my generation ain't playing that shit. We will detach now for our mental health and our peace. And so, Chantel, I get it. I get it. Jackie, you ain't right. You ain't right, you know. Chantel, you ain't right either. But like you said, your therapist said, you have the burden to do better, okay? And unfortunately, that's just how it is. Like, comment, subscribe, share, guys. And don't forget to please engage with me. Let me know what y'all think on the topic. All right, peace and blessings. Bye.